Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment when you must ask yourself a simple question. Is this helping me or is it hurting me? Many carry the burden of invisible chains. Chains forged not by others, but by their own attachment to pain, regret, and fear. You are not suffering because life is cruel. You are suffering because you keep revisiting the wound instead of healing it. The problem is not the emotion, the problem is your relationship to it. This is why you must listen closely, because the way out is already within you. Awareness is the foundation of all transformation. Before anything can change in your life, before your habits, your reactions, your thoughts, or your emotions evolve, there must first be awareness. It is like turning on a light in a dark room. The moment the light is switched on, you don't have to guess where the obstacles are. You can see, and once you can see, you can choose where to go and what to avoid. Negative emotions are not the enemy, they are signals. But most people are unaware that they are being ruled by these emotions because they have allowed them to operate silently, like background noise they've grown accustomed to. The anger that flares up quickly, the irritation that lingers, the sadness that clings quietly in the morning. These are not just moods, they are signs pointing toward something unhealed, something unprocessed. But how can you respond to a signal you don't even realize is sounding? When you lack awareness, your reaction becomes automatic. You feel disrespected and immediately there is rage. You face a challenge and anxiety takes over. Someone criticizes you and suddenly you shut down. You don't question the reaction, you become it. That's what unconscious living does. It merges who you are with what you feel. In doing so, it robs you of your freedom. But when awareness is present, a gap appears. In that space, you become capable of noticing, here it is. Anger. You don't deny it. You don't fight it. And most importantly, you don't become it. You just notice it. And in that noticing, you begin to dissolve the emotional grip it has over you. This is the first and most powerful step toward emotional mastery. It's not about suppressing or avoiding negative emotions. It's about witnessing them without feeding them. And to do that, you must cultivate awareness. This awareness is not something that just appears by reading a book or hearing a teaching once. It is a practice, a discipline. You begin by paying attention. Where does your mind go when you are alone? What kind of thoughts rise when you are under stress? What stories repeat when someone disappoints you? These are clues. They are not random. They form a pattern. And the more you observe them, the more you begin to see that the emotions you feel are often rehearsals from your past, not accurate reflections of the present. You may be reacting to someone's tone not because of what they said, but because of how someone else once made you feel. You may be drowning in self-doubt not because you are incapable, but because long ago someone planted the seed of inadequacy in your mind, and you've unknowingly been watering it ever since. Awareness shows you the seed and the watering can in your hand. It lets you say, I no longer choose to nourish this thought. I no longer allow this emotion to grow unchecked. That's the beginning of change. Without awareness, we are prisoners of emotional patterns that were never consciously chosen. With awareness, we become architects of our internal world, and that is why awareness precedes change. Because when you see clearly, you don't need motivation to act differently. You naturally move in alignment with clarity. Just like a person will not keep walking toward fire once they see that it burns, you too will stop feeding negativity when you truly see what it does to your mind, your energy, and your life. If you truly wish to stop focusing on negative emotions, do not begin by attacking the emotion. Begin by turning on the light. Your emotions are not your identity. This is a truth that once realized can liberate you from years, sometimes decades, of unnecessary suffering. You feel fear, but you are not fear. You feel anger, but you are not anger. You experience sadness, but you are not sadness. These emotions arise within you, but they are not you. They are like passing weather, temporary conditions that move through the vast sky of your awareness. But most people make the mistake of fusing their identity with their emotional state. When they feel angry, they say, I am angry. When they feel anxious, they say, I am anxious. And by doing so, they declare ownership over something that was only meant to be experienced, not internalized. This distinction is critical. The moment you say, I am, you are not describing what you feel. You are describing who you believe yourself to be. And if you continually say, I am sad, you begin to see yourself as a sad person. If you say, I am angry, anger becomes your nature, not your reaction. This is how emotions, which are natural and momentary, turn into chronic mental states. You've claimed them, you've worn them like clothing and forgotten how to take them off. But take a moment and observe. Have you ever had a moment of laughter in the middle of sadness? A second of calm during chaos? That shift proves that these emotions are not fixed. They are flowing. They arise, they peak, and they fall if you let them. But when you cling to them and believe they are who you are, you stop the natural flow, you trap yourself. This is why learning to observe your emotions rather than becoming them is so important. It creates a separation between the observer and the experience. You can begin to say, I notice anger arising in me, rather than, I am angry. That subtle shift changes everything. It tells your mind, this is temporary. This is not who I am. This is just something I am experiencing. It's like standing on the bank of a river and watching leaves float by. One leaf might represent irritation. Another leaf might represent fear. Another disappointment. If you watch them, they float downstream. But if you jump in and try to grab the leaves, you get swept away by the current. That's what happens when you identify with your emotions. You get carried away by them, and sometimes you don't even realize it until you've already said something hurtful, made a poor decision, or let your day be ruined. You must remember this. Emotions are messengers, not masters. They arise to tell you something. Anger may arise to show you that a boundary has been crossed. Sadness may show you that something you valued is now gone. Fear may appear when you're stepping into the unknown. But these are signals. They are meant to be noticed, reflected upon, and released, not rehearsed endlessly in your mind. The moment you stop identifying with emotions, you begin to regain your power. Power to respond rather than react. Power to choose a different emotional direction. Power to remain centered even in the midst of chaos. You are the awareness behind the emotion, the space in which the emotion appears and disappears. Emotions may rise like waves, but you are the ocean, deep, still, and undisturbed at your core. So the next time you feel an emotion rising, pause. Don't become it. Observe it. Label it gently. This is irritation. This is fear. And then let it move. Let it pass. Because what passes is not you. It never was. You are not the storm. You are the sky. What you focus on, you feed. This is not philosophy, it's the very mechanism of your mind. Wherever your attention goes, your energy flows. And what receives your energy grows stronger. So when you constantly focus on negative emotions, on what's wrong, what's missing, who hurt you, what might go badly, you are not simply observing your reality. You are reinforcing it. You are building a mental structure around those thoughts until eventually they become your emotional default. The mind is like a lens. It doesn't just record the world, it shapes it. Two people can face the exact same situation and have entirely different experiences. One feels defeated while the other sees an opportunity. The difference isn't in what happened, it's in what each person chose to focus on. Your focus colors your interpretation, and your interpretation determines your emotions. This is why some people live in constant fear and anxiety, even when their lives are relatively stable. It's not because the world is falling apart. It's because their focus is always scanning for danger, lack, or judgment. You must understand that the human brain has a bias toward the negative. It's a survival mechanism, left over from times when recognizing a threat could mean the difference between life and death. But in the modern world, this instinct can become a trap. If you're not intentional with your focus, Your mind will always drift toward what's wrong. It will highlight your flaws, amplify your doubts, and recall your failures. Not because these things are more real, but because your attention keeps circling them. The good news is, focus is not fixed. It can be trained. You can redirect it, refine it, and reclaim it. You don't need to deny that negativity exists. You simply need to stop giving it all your attention. When you constantly revisit the same painful memory or dwell on something someone said to hurt you, you're not healing, you're rehearsing. And with every mental replay, that emotional wound becomes deeper, more familiar, more alive. But there's a different path, one that requires awareness and discipline. You start by becoming conscious of what you are feeding with your thoughts. Ask yourself daily, where is my focus right now? Is it on problems or possibilities? On blame or responsibility? On fear or growth? You must realize that even in difficult moments, you still have a choice. You can choose to focus on what's within your control rather than obsessing over what's not. You can focus on the lesson, not just the loss. You can shift your energy toward the next step instead of staying stuck in what went wrong. And just like a muscle, this mental shift becomes stronger with practice. At first it may feel unnatural. Your old thought patterns will try to pull you back. But each time you choose to focus on what uplifts, what empowers, what strengthens, you are rewiring your brain. You are changing your internal chemistry. You are planting seeds of resilience. Eventually, you'll notice a change. The emotions that once ruled you will lose their intensity. The things that used to trigger you will feel distant, like a storm that's passed. And you will realize that peace was never about your external circumstances. It was always about where you chose to place your attention. Focus is fuel. Don't waste it on what drains you. Use it to build the mindset, the emotions, and the life you truly want, because what you focus on consistently, deliberately, becomes not just what you feel, but who you become. In a world that constantly demands your reaction, stillness is a form of strength. When something upsets you, someone's words, a frustrating situation, a painful reminder, your first impulse is often to react. You raise your voice, you defend yourself, you retaliate. But reaction is noise. It is movement without awareness. It is a wave crashing without purpose. Stillness, on the other hand, is conscious presence. It is the space between impulse and response, where clarity lives and power begins. Most people misunderstand stillness. They think it means weakness, passivity, or doing nothing. But in truth, stillness is one of the most powerful responses you can give, especially when emotions are high. It is not the absence of action, it is the restraint of unnecessary action. Stillness means you are not letting your emotions drag you into chaos. You are not allowing the energy of others to dictate your state. You are choosing peace, not because you are afraid to fight, but because you know which battles are not worth entering. When someone disrespects you, your ego wants to rise up. It says, prove them wrong, don't let them get away with it. But ask yourself, what do you lose when you react to every insult, every slight, every opinion that doesn't sit well with you? You lose control, you lose focus, you lose energy, and most importantly, you lose your center. True strength is not found in loud retaliation. It is found in silent control. The ability to remain calm while everything around you provokes you is a sign of deep mastery. It means your emotions no longer own you. It means your peace is no longer negotiable. Stillness is also where insight arises. In reaction, you are clouded. Your mind races, your breath shortens, your body tightens. But in stillness, you observe. You can see the emotion rise like a wave, and instead of riding it blindly, you let it crest and fall. In that quiet space, you can ask the right questions. Why did this trigger me? What part of me is hurt? Is this worth responding to? What will bring me closer to peace, not just momentary satisfaction? This doesn't mean you never act. It means you act from intention, not impulse. Stillness gives you that power. It gives you the opportunity to choose, not based on emotion, but on wisdom. A well-timed silence speaks louder than a rushed reaction. A delayed response rooted in clarity holds more weight than a defensive outburst. In stillness, you also reclaim your energy. Every time you react emotionally, you expend energy that could have been used for healing, for creating, for growing. But when you practice stillness, that energy stays with you. It nourishes your discipline, it sharpens your awareness, it grounds you in the present moment, where peace is always available. There is a reason why the most disciplined minds in history have emphasized silence, breath, and inner stillness, because from this space, true wisdom arises. From this space, you are no longer a slave to the outer world. You no longer dance to the rhythm of others' chaos. So when you feel overwhelmed, when you're provoked or hurt or frustrated, pause. Don't speak. Don't act. Don't judge. Just breathe. Watch the emotion rise. Let it pass. Let the silence teach you what the noise never could. Because in stillness, you reclaim the one thing that truly belongs to you, yourself. Every negative emotion you carry is tied to a story. These stories are not just random thoughts. They are the mental narratives you've constructed around your experiences, beliefs, and pain. And these narratives, whether consciously or unconsciously created, have incredible power. They shape the way you see the world, interpret events, and respond to life. But here's the truth. Most of these stories are outdated. They no longer serve you. Yet you keep telling them to yourself again and again, like a song stuck on repeat. Someone once betrayed you, so now the story is, people can't be trusted. You failed at something important, and now the story says, I'm not good enough. You were rejected, and the story you've clung to is, I'm unlovable. These stories may have formed as a way to protect you. They helped make sense of pain at the time, but as time goes on, what once protected you starts to confine you. The story becomes the cage, and the longer you repeat it, the more real it feels, even though it may not reflect your current reality at all. But the emotion tied to these stories lingers, not because the emotion is still fresh, but because you keep rehearsing the story. You wake up, and without realizing it, your thoughts drift toward that memory, that person, that failure, and then the emotion reactivates, as if it just happened. You re-feel the same pain, re-engage the same fear, relieve the same hurt. You must understand, emotions don't survive without fuel. And the fuel is always the story. If you stop feeding the story, the emotion begins to fade. But this takes awareness. It takes the courage to challenge your beliefs about yourself, to ask, what if this story isn't true anymore? What if it never was? Sometimes people fear letting go of their story because it has become part of their identity. Who would you be without your pain? Without your resentment? Without the narrative of always being the victim or the outsider or the misunderstood one? The answer is, you would be free. You would be present. You would no longer be living from the past, but creating from the now. Letting the story die doesn't mean the pain didn't happen. It means you no longer want to carry it forward. You honor the lesson, but release the weight. You stop letting something from 5 years ago or 10 years ago determine your current peace and future path. Start by noticing the stories that show up when you're upset or triggered. Write them down, speak them aloud, challenge them. Ask, is this a fact or just my interpretation? Ask, who would I be if I no longer believed this? You'll find that without the story, the emotion has nowhere to stay. It cannot attach itself to silence. It cannot linger in neutrality. It thrives in repetition, but withers in awareness. So let the story die. Not because you're denying your experience, but because you're ready to stop reliving it. You are not here to carry every wound forever. You are here to learn, to evolve, and to move forward lighter. And when you let the story go, you create space for a new one. One that isn't written from fear or pain, but from possibility and peace. That story begins not with your past, but with your choice to stop being defined by it. You become what you practice. This is a law of life that few recognize deeply, yet it governs everything: your thoughts, your habits, your emotions, and ultimately your identity. Every day, whether you are aware of it or not, you are in training. You are practicing a way of thinking, a way of feeling, a way of responding to the world around you. And whatever you practice repeatedly becomes your default state. If you constantly practice focusing on what's missing, what's wrong, or what hurts, you are training your mind to stay in a state of negativity. If you repeatedly allow anger, jealousy, or fear to dominate your inner world, those emotions will become the emotional tone of your life. Not because they are stronger than you, but because you've reinforced them again and again, through repetition, attention, and acceptance. What many people fail to see is that emotions are not just things that happen to us. They are patterns we cultivate, and like any pattern, they can be changed, but only through conscious and consistent practice. You can't expect to feel peace if all you've practiced is chaos. You can't expect calmness if your daily emotional habit is reactivity. Just as you wouldn't expect a muscle to grow without training it, you can't expect emotional strength without emotional discipline. You don't need to feel perfect to begin this practice. You simply need to begin. Each time you feel yourself spiraling into negativity, pause and interrupt the pattern. Even a small moment of awareness counts. That pause, that breath, that conscious decision not to follow the old script, that is practice. And over time, those small shifts accumulate into transformation. The problem is, most people wait until they feel like changing. But the truth is, emotion follows motion. You don't become peaceful and then start acting calmly. You act calmly and train your body and mind to dwell in peace. You don't wait until you feel confident to take action. You take action until confidence becomes familiar. The practice comes first. The emotional state follows. This is not about pretending. It's not about faking happiness or denying pain. It's about choosing your direction even when your emotions are pulling you elsewhere. It's about saying, I may feel this now, but I will not build my life around this. It's the decision to move consciously, even through discomfort. The power in this truth is that it puts your emotional well-being back into your hands. You don't have to be a slave to how you feel. You don't have to wait for circumstances to change before you can feel peace. You can begin the practice now, right here, in this moment, by choosing one small shift, a breath before you react, a moment of silence instead of argument, a word of gratitude instead of complaint. Every one of those choices is a practice, and with enough repetition, they become natural. You start to rewire your nervous system, retrain your thoughts, and realign your emotions. This is how people become emotionally strong, not because life is easy, but because they chose to practice strength again and again until it became who they are. So ask yourself honestly, what am I practicing today? What emotion, what reaction, what thought am I reinforcing through repetition? Because whatever you practice, you become. And if you want to become peaceful, grounded, clear, and strong, you must stop waiting to feel that way and start practicing it now. Not once, every day, even in the small moments, especially in the small moments. Your future emotional life is not a matter of chance, it is a matter of practice. So the next time a dark thought visits, don't invite it in for tea. Observe it, breathe, and let it pass. Because ultimately, you are not the storm. You are the sky that holds it.